and welcome back to week 2 of Happy Stitchmas 24. Today we are going to be finishing off the stitches that you need for the wreath around the outside. So last week I showed you how to use a stem stitch for this brown. We did satin stitch berries and we did fly stitch for the holly. As you can see, I have not had the time this week to finish my wreath, what I taught you last week, and that's okay. So I sat down for an hour or so at the weekend watching a film and managed to do most of the brown then. And snippets of times I've been working on my berries as we go around. I've got a few of those to do left. The next thing I'm going to show you is how to finish a kind of section of the wreath. So don't worry if you haven't managed to do the stitches that I have done. Do not worry if you haven't even started. There's still plenty of time. I just don't want to hold you back if you've had lots of stitching time. I want to let you know what's coming up next. You can dip in whenever throughout December or even into next year if you need to. There is no pressure. It's just a fun project to do, and you've always got these videos to come back to and refer to. So please do not worry if you have not started. So if I get my example here, what we're going to do next is this lovely dark green to make the, is it pine or fir tree? The Christmas tree foliage. That's what we're going to do next, and it's the same stitch that we've used for the outside of the holly leaf, just done slightly differently. And I think the combination of the different greens really makes it pop. I love this colour. So I have threaded up my needle with this green. I've got my scissors. I'm ready to go. So I'm going to do it on this sample here. So this is going to be my section that I work my sample on, and through the week, hopefully by the time I come and do the next bit, you'll see how much I've managed to get done. So we're going to start at the end of the branch up here. This week I've remembered to film in landscape, so hopefully none of my stitches will disappear off the bottom of the video like they did last week. Okay, so we're going to start at the tip of the branch and work our way down. And we're going to start just with a small straight stitch at the top here. So I've got my 3 strands of thread. Sorry, because I'm working on the berries, I've still got my red attached, and that is going to cause a few problems. I'm just going to take that needle off. So it's tapping. There we go. Okay. So I'm just going to do 1 small stitch at the top to get started. And then, just like when we did the holly leaves, we're thinking about the 3 points. So we've got point 1, point 2, and point 3. So on the holly leaves, we had point 1, point 2, 3 and 4 across the top. And it was a really small little stitch, just holding the stitch in place to create that scallop around the edge. So with this one, we have got point 1 on the left, point 2 on the right, point 3 is at the bottom of this stitch that we've just taken, and point 4 is here. So it's a longer stitch. So your stitch 4 is going to create the stem of this leaf. Okay. So I'm coming up at point 1. Down at point 2, remembering to keep that loop of thread out of the way. Then I'm going to come up at point 3, which is at the bottom of that first stitch that we took. Pull that through. And now this time, the stitch that's going to form is going to be more of a V shape. This is the traditional kind of fly stitch shape. And stitch 4 is forming that central line. Okay, so there's the first stitch that we took. Now we've got point 1, point 2, and then 3 and 4. So we're going to repeat that on the next one. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a bit of a squeeze at the top of the branch. And then it spaces out a little bit more. So I've come up at 1, come up at 1, down at 2, keeping my loop out of the way. Back at 3, and that's going to form that V shape. Just pull your working thread gently just to create that V shape. And then secure it by going down into point 4. And then we're just going to carry that on all the way down. And I just catch it with my thumb to keep that loop from going too close. So I can see where I'm going to come up, rocking it back, gently tugging so it's lying where I want it to. Okay. Oh, finding it a bit tricky to find that. Point 3. Gently through, rock back and down. So it's taken me a bit of a while to tug through to the back because I've got this red thread from where I'm still doing my berries. Look, I've managed to get it all tangled, and so I will cut that off. I should have done that to begin with, really. I was just trying to save thread, but I've made things more tricky for myself. Okay. So we're going to carry that on till we get to here, and then you have one here and one here. So this kind of makes the repeatable motif. So you have 3 bits of this fur, and then we have got our mistletoe here. And that will be the next stitch that we're going to do. So I put a question into the Facebook group. If you are, if you're following along with Stitchmas, if you've got the kit and you haven't joined the Facebook group, then you're very welcome to. There's not many of us in there. It's very small, very selective group of little people. Not little people, they're not tiny people. They're just a small group of people. And yeah, so if you want to join us, please do. And I put a picture of my wreath in there, just asking how you stitch yours, really. It's a bit like that Cadbury's cream egg advert. How do you eat yours? How do you stitch yours? So I like to go round and do all of one colour rather than complete motifs, but it's up to you. I'm just interested in how you like to do it. So if I was continuing this myself, I would now go on to do this one and this one, but instead we're going to move on to do our mistletoe. For the mistletoe, there's a combination of different stitches to create this shape of the leaves at the end. So the stem is actually made up of backstitch. And then at the end of each of these, I have done a detached chain stitch. And then I have satin stitched over the top, and then added the white French knots afterwards. So I know that in the stitch diagram it mentions satin stitch, but I have a little bit of a trick of how I get that shape with the satin stitch. So I have threaded up my light green, and I'm going to start first with a backstitch. So starting at the end of the branch, you take one small straight stitch, and I'm going to come up in front. I'm going to go along and do this one first, so I'm going up that way. Come come up in front and go back to that previous stitch to create my back stitch, and then I do a smaller one. There we go. So that is how I'm going to do these stems, is with a back stitch. Now when you get to the end for this shape, rather than do satin stitch like we did with the berries, to begin with, I'm going to bring my needle up just in front of that last stitch, and I'm going to do a detached chain stitch. So I'm going to hold my working thread out of the way to the side. I always hold it to the left, probably because I'm right-handed. I'm going to take my needle back very close to where it's come out, just next to that, and pull through until I have got a loop. Now with this loop, this is what is going to form this kind of chain. So I am going to pull it gently until it sits kind of roughly. You need to be careful it doesn't twist too much at the bottom. It's not so bad with this. I'm just trying to angle my camera so you can see it better. There we go. It's not too bad with this one because we're then going to cover it up with satin stitch. But you just need to make sure it's lying the way that it's come out of, the thread has come out of the fabric, so you don't have a twist at the bottom. So I have got a loop, a chain. I'm going to bring my needle up at the top of that shape. I pulled that a bit too far just to kind of demonstrate. So I've got my loop. I'm going to bring my needle up at the top of the chain shape and make sure the needle is inside that loop, so that when I gently pull, it's going to lie that loop on top of the chain diagram, the picture, so it kind of looks like this shape. Doesn't have to be exact, just needs to cover up that drawing on the fabric. And then I'm going to take my needle, sorry I didn't explain what I was doing there. Take your needle back down on the outside of that loop so that when you pull, you're securing it in place. So we've created a detached chain stitch. And what that does is it creates the outline and the shape for us to satin stitch over. So if you have a look at my example, it's raised off the back of the fabric, and that's because I have got the outline of the Lazy Daisy detached chain stitch underneath, and I have satin stitch over the top. So now that I have created that outline, I'm going to bring my needle back up in the middle of the shape at the top, and just like we did for satin stitch for the berries, I'm going to bring it straight down. Don't pull it too tight, just getting it to lie on top of that shape. Go back to the top and straight back down again. Do those stitches really closely to the previous stitch. Use the eye of your needle to just adjust those stitches until they're lying how you would like them to. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate that again. So from here, I'm going to go back to here, bring my needle up, and this is do a back stitch to here, a back stitch to here. That's the kind of flow that I'm doing. I'm almost stitching it as I drew it, the same kind of direction. I mean the same order. Bring. So I've done 2 back stitches, and then I'm going to do the next back stitch as well. So I have done my back stitch stem, and now I'm going to do this detached chain. So I'm going to bring my needle up at the base, put it all the way through, and I'm going to hold this thread out of the way. I'm going to put my needle back down next to it and pull it through until I have a loop. So I like to put my finger in the loop to hold it out the way. It's a bit difficult to hold that and the hoop on camera. So I've put my finger in the loop that I've created to hold it out of the way. I'm going to bring my needle up at the end of that loop there, making sure that the needle is inside that loop of thread, and pull gently until it tightens. Don't pull it too quickly and don't pull it too taut, otherwise you'll end up with a really straight chain. See, I'm using the tip of my needle to kind of keep it spread out as I pull. And I don't want it completely closed together. I'll demonstrate. If I pull that really tightly, it's going to squeeze it together and then you're going to have gaps either side. What we want is the fuller loop. Like that. And then I'm going to secure that in place by just taking my needle down at the end of that loop and making a small stitch. And then you can also spread it out so it lies where you want if you're not happy with it. Now we get to do the satin stitch. So I'm going to bring my needle up at the top of the loop, straight down to the bottom. Not pulling it too tightly. This one looks a bit messy because it didn't like me pulling it tight and then loosening it again. So I'm just going to hope for the best. So I did a central one and then one to the right and one to the left I'm doing now to kind of get that full shape. Oh, sorry. I'm not particularly happy with that one because the daisy chain underneath is poking through. So I think I'm going to do another stitch over the top in the hope that it will lie a little bit smoother. There we go, that's a bit better. Okay, and now I'm going to go on to the next one. Demonstrate that again. So I've come up at the bottom of that chain, hold it out the way, needle down, then as I pull and it gets closer, I'm going to put my finger in that loop to keep it out of the way, bring my needle up at the top of the chain, make sure the needle is inside the loop as I gently pull. So I tend to pull and put my needle in the middle of the loop and just make sure that I'm keeping those edges where I want them. Secure it with a straight stitch at the top. And you can see I haven't pulled that very tightly. It's still quite loose on the top of the fabric to add a bit of texture. Then bring my needle up at the top, straight down to do a central stitch, and then just filling in the rest of the gaps as you see fit. So I can see that actually mine's a bit gappy on the left hand side. So I'm going to put another stitch there, not pulling too hard. You can see there's another little gap there. Oh, I need to pull that a bit smoother. Straight back up to the top. To down at the bottom. Using the eye of my needle to just straighten those stitches out, spread them out so it covers all of the space. There we go. So to finish this, the green part of the mistletoe, I would then bring my needle up here and do backstitch along this stem and up there and up there, and then I would do my 3 chain stitch. It's up to you whether you do all of the backstitch first and then that's just the flow that I like to do. I find it saves more thread at the back from jumping from here to there. I just like to do a flow and think about how I'm going to do it. So I started with the backstitch up to here, and then I did my leaf. Then I did backstitch up to here and here, 2 leaves. I would then do backstitch up to here and across, and then do my 3 leaves. But the next thing I'm going to show you is the French knots for the white berries. One of the most common stitches that people with my kits or people on my workshops have issues with is French knots. Now it's either because they've struggled with them for a long time, or they just can't get on with them, they don't understand instructions. That are either in books, because it's a tricky thing to explain when you're writing instructions. The written instructions that I've got in my own embroidery stitch guide, which is included in the kit, is really hard to convey through the written word exactly what you're doing and where to put your fingers and things. So if you struggle with French knots, if you are in the Facebook group, I will put an additional video going through this process a bit smaller, I'm really struggling with my words today. I will put a video in the Facebook group explaining it in finer detail, going over how to conquer French knots. If you are really struggling with them, I will also put in a video of how you can replace your French knot with a colonial knot. If you are not part of the Facebook group, then there are instructions of how to sign up inside your kit. There is a link in there and it tells you everything, or you can get in touch with me via my email address. Right, so we are going to do a French knot on here. I would recommend that if it's something that you're not sure of how to do, that you check out the video on Facebook and that you have a go either on a scrap bit of fabric or on the edge of your fabric here until you are happy that you can do them consistently. Because if you do them on your actual stitching and you mess it up, it is possible to undo it, and I can show you how to do that, but it's just a bit trickier. So yeah, you've got all of this extra fabric around here that you can have a little practice on, or just get a piece of felt, practice until you feel that you can do it. So there are 3 French knots for our mistletoe, one here, here and here. So I'm going to start with this one down the bottom, and I'm going to bring my needle up in the centre of that circle. Okay, I'm going to hold my thread out of the way. Zoom in a little bit. Hold my thread out of the way, my needle, wrap away from myself. I'm going to do 4 times because it's a fairly big circle that we want to fill. Put that needle back in close to, but not in the same hole. I'm holding tension in my left hand with the thread. Gently pull through, and there I have my French knot. I'm now going to do the next one up here. Bring it up at the back in the centre of that circle. Hold my tension in my left hand, my non-dominant hand. Wrap away from myself 4 times. Oh, I lost count because I was talking. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to put that needle back into the fabric, close but not into the same hole, holding the tension in that non-dominant hand. Push my needle through, pulling gently until it forms a knot. And then my last one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Put the needle in and push. Oops. If you struggle, you might need to just loosen your grip on that bit. And there we go. Now what I would do is then secure off my thread at the back before moving on to the next batch of my mistletoe. If you do make a mistake with your French knot, then you can just pull it up slightly from the fabric and cut that thread. But then it means you have to redo all 3 if you've used one thread to do the 3 of them in the back. If it was just one of them that you wanted to unpick, then unfortunately if you do cut it at the back, then you probably should cut all 3 and pull them out. If you're unsure of your French knots, you could fasten them off at the back after each one. But as I said, if you have a little practice on the edge, then you should be fine. I will put a slower, more detailed video of French knots and colonial knots into the Facebook group. I also have videos for both, I think, on my YouTube playlist of stitches as well. So this week we did the fly stitch and we did backstitch, detached chain, satin stitch and a French knot. There's lots there to be going on with. As I said, do not worry if you have not even got started. We are only on the 2nd week of December. There's plenty of time to get stuck in. And if you're watching this and you haven't got a kit, why not? The link is down below. If you would like to share with me how you're finding the videos, if there's any other help that you need, any other questions that you've got, then please comment below or in the Facebook group or email me privately and I would love to hear from you. Thanks, see you next week.